Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Emily Hankins. I'm the current curator and manager of the Union Art Gallery, and here with a lot of fellow past curators, which is very fun for me. And hopefully you'll learn a lot about the exhibitions and other exhibitions that aren't highlighted in the show, but hopefully some fun things about the history of the gallery that only kind of these people can really share. So I'm excited to hear from everyone. So this is one of our last events for the exhibition, but we will have also two trios. So this upcoming Wednesday, there'll be a trio in the gallery from 12:30 to 1:30 playing, and then the following Wednesday after that, there'll be another trio. They're kind of a woodwinds trio. The first one's more jazz, and that'll be I think it's the 29th. 23rd, 29th. And then again, 12:30 to 1:30, kind of a lunchtime concert, which is sort of calling back to when they did a lot of lunchtime concerts at the gallery in kind of the 80s. So trying to kind of bring in the past to now, and hopefully that'll be fun for everyone. Beyond that, the show closes physically on September 30th. But we have a virtual scan of it up on our website. So if you look up UWM Union Art Gallery, you'll find our virtual exhibitions website linked to our regular website. And then you can kind of walk through. It's a Matterport scan, pardon me. So it is like you're actually walking through the gallery. Label information's all there. And hopefully you can check it out. So yeah, tonight's event will be, we have 7 curators here to talk. And at the end, there will be some time for Q&A. And feel free to, in the chat, not only talk to each other or kind of comment on anything, but also add in any questions you might have that might come up. We can also open it up if you want to ask a question personally to someone, that's fine too, but feel free to use the chat function to ask questions. All right, so I think we're ready to start. Everyone will be talking about 2 exhibitions / projects that they worked on while they were curator manager at the gallery. And they'll also be kind of talking about where they're at now and how the gallery changed their trajectory or kind of influenced their trajectory of their careers. So hopefully it'll be fun. We'll learn a lot. And I'll take it over to Sophie with the PowerPoint, and then we'll get started.
I've never shared my screen on Zoom before. I've done Teams and Blackboard, so this is my first time. So
looks good.
Bear with me here. All right.
Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. Should I go ahead and get started?
Yay, Josie.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Josie Osborne. I am I'm a senior lecturer in the art and design department at UWM, and I'm also an alum of this program. And I run the first year program for art and design majors. So I actually started working at the Union Art Gallery in 1983 as a double major in art history and studio art. I had never curated an exhibition. I had never installed a formal exhibition. I was starting totally green, but I had visited many exhibitions and it continued to travel to New York City, Chicago, Minneapolis, every chance I got, went to a lot of shows in Milwaukee, and built a lot of creative capital and connections in the Milwaukee area. After 2 years of working at the gallery, I became a manager and had my first taste of curation and co-curation. And at the time, the Union Art Gallery student managers were they did less curated shows. We would open up a proposal process and we would choose exhibition proposals and then work very closely with the people who are proposing the exhibition. So it involved some curation, but I worked with a lot of curators, worked closely, and I learned from working closely with them how to curate and sometimes what not to do. But I got to know a very broad range of artists and curators and educators over those 4 years of my working at the gallery. The experiences were amazing. It really opened doors for future art-related and arts administration-related jobs. The Art Muscle exhibition and kickoff event that's presented in the current show was actually the first show that I really had a fair amount of input on in terms of working with and selecting some of the artists that were in the exhibition. I started planning it with Deb Bramer and Michael and Carly over a year in advance, having meetings regularly, and it was really exciting and felt like very important work. I learned about project management. I learned about program planning, professional communications, and marketing writing, which I had never done before as a part of my work at the gallery. I started working with designers and commercial printers and art critics and writing press releases and doing marketing, a variety of marketing approaches. And I really started to build trusting relationships with mutual respect with many of those people, which those relationships lasted far beyond my job at the Union Art Gallery. I began to exhibit my own work and got some street cred with that, which opened different kinds of doors. And I began to see themes and relationships emerging in the art that I saw out in the world. And I had a lot of artists, friends and artists who I admired, whose work I was interested in seeing paired or grouped together, sometimes thematically, sometimes just because there was this sort of poetic connection between their works. I started curating shows more intensely after I left the Union Art Gallery when I was in grad school in Madison, and then later on at Walker's Point Center for the Arts and Jazz Gallery Center for the Arts. And then when I came to UWM to teach 14 years ago, I began to share some of those ideas that I had, local and regional artists and contacts with Union Art Gallery managers, sort of became a resource for them. Many who were new to Milwaukee or new to curation themselves. So even if I wasn't the curator in name, I had been able to help support the new managers and see artists and themes that I had been interested in exploring, at least in a number of different shows. The 10 Wisconsin Sculptors exhibition was the most recent. I had been thinking about all the amazing women artists, women sculptors here in Wisconsin. And I was thinking about actually proposing a show to Danielle, and then I got a phone call from her that there had been a fairly last-minute exhibition cancellation, and I shared my idea with her and the list of artists and helped to get that exhibition going. So working with the Union Art Gallery has continued to bring incredible joy, and I really view curation as part of my creative practice. So it's been great to continue to work with the Union Art Gallery and the folks that are running it in recent years too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Josie, for your words. Yeah, I when I found out that Art Muscle had its launch there at the Union Art Gallery, I was really surprised, but it makes sense. I mean, Deborah's an alumni and everything, but an alum and everything. But how was I know you said the process was a lot. There was a lot happening because it wasn't just a launch party. It was also an exhibition, right? That different artists who were in the magazine, or did they not have to be in the magazine?
They didn't have to. The magazine was just getting started, so right. It was really Milwaukee artists, both visual artists, performance artists. There were a number of performance artists that were there, musicians, and we sort of organized a bit of a happening, if you can organize a happening. And there was a lot of programming that happened around that exhibition. You mentioned the lunch hour concerts, and that sort of thing happened like weekly back when I was there. And it definitely, oh my gosh, my dog is going completely cuckoo. Sorry.
Oh, no.
But yes, there were lots of visual artists that were in that exhibition. It was a big group show. In the different bays, there were different performances happening, and film and video being screened, and it was a lot. It was a very exciting exhibition, very exciting evening of the opening. It was really lively, and just felt like we were kind of on the cutting edge of, it seemed like it was going to put Milwaukee on the map in terms of the arts community, and really celebrated all of the creative energy that was happening during that time.
Yeah, I bet a lot of well-known local artists that kind of have their own sort of auras around them were probably in attendance, and yeah, it probably felt very, like you said, cutting edge and very cool. And I didn't realize that you were the curator and manager at that time. So that's very neat. And also, Josie is always very generous with helping and giving guidance for the gallery stuff. And I know that since we've been virtual, I haven't gotten to talk to her as much about things, but hopefully in this next year, kind of picking your brain, because I know that you've worked on a lot of beautiful, wonderful things. So yeah. All right, Josie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we'll go on to Andrea.
Hi, so my name is Andrea Skyberg, and I was part of the gallery from, I think, about 2004 to 2007, maybe like right at the end of 2004. And I came in, I probably was similar to Josie, where I came in without having really done any gallery work before except my own, because I was in school as a visual artist. So I was getting my master's degree in fiber arts and museum studies. And so it seemed like a really great fit to be able to work in the gallery. And a lot of the shows that I was able to do while I was there were some of my favorite artists that I got to work with, or artists that I just discovered and myself just discovered, not like I discovered them, but and I got to bring them into the gallery. And some of the artists that I work with, I still to this day have a really good connection with, which is great. So the Mirror on the Wall exhibition was really, so while I was at the gallery, I ended up having a child, and she was about a year old, I think, when I left the gallery. So it was like a really crazy time of having, working on my MFA and working at the gallery, and then also having a baby. And I started to get really excited about the idea of looking at ways that we teach our children, and especially girls, the value of beauty and what we actually call beauty. And so I was looking at toys, I was looking at children's books, and with Mirror on the Wall, I just happened, I think I was trying to remember how I found some of the artists. I knew Rebecca Pearson, who is, if you're looking at the screen right there, it's the white bed with the red, because she was also in the MFA program. And I fell in love with her work while I was working at the school. Della Wells, I've always been a huge fan of Della's work. And she, actually, I got to do a book with Della just a couple of years ago. So I've kept in contact with Della, and I, whenever I see her work, I'm just blown away. But Claudia De Monte, I was not sure how I remembered. I was trying to rack my brain, like, how did I discover her? How did I know her? And I think I must have Googled like beauty and women and art dolls or something, but she had created this collection of art dolls from her travels. So she had like over 100 dolls from all over the world that were on display in the gallery. And then Nikki was somebody that I found in, I think I was traveling actually, and Nikki Carrera, and I saw a postcard with her imagery on it, and it looked like giant coloring books. So I thought this would be a great addition to the exhibition. What I loved about working at the gallery was that as a creative artist, I was working on my own body of work, but I also had the opportunity to take people that I knew of or that I just found their work to be really beautiful or profoundly interesting. And I got to bring them into the gallery space, and it started almost like a new conversation. It's almost like a collaboration. Even though it wasn't a physical collaboration, there was new ideas being formed because of the way that the work was put together, and how one piece talked to another piece. And I think with this show in particular too, one of my favorite things was planning the extra events that went along with the gallery shows. Because what I found after doing it a couple of years was that it was wonderful to get an audience into the gallery, but it seemed to be that it was, you know, the same people kept coming, and it was hard to get outside of the walls of people that were already used to being in a gallery. And I really wanted to have more of an inclusiveness of like, hey, anybody can come in here. There's so much to do. But there was almost like a border of like, I don't know if this is the right spot for me. So I would create special events like book clubs, poetry slams, or my favorite one for Mirror Mirror on the Wall was, so it just happened to be Barbie's birthday, and like Barbie the doll. And I was like, well, how perfect is this? We have to celebrate Barbie's birthday. And there was an artist who was already working with Barbie and recreating Barbie. So we brought her, and I gotta remember her name. I think I wrote it down somewhere. Jean Woodsmansie. And she came in and showed some of her recreated Barbies, but also ran a workshop down on the lower level of the Union. So people could come in, have birthday cake, and then take an old Barbie doll and remake it. So they could like tattoo it, or they could add clay to it and make it bigger, or they could dye the hair, whatever they wanted to do. That was like a really fun event. And then just having extra events that were tied to the theater department or performance or the art workshops, that was really fun. So I think that idea of having a gallery on campus where you have access to all these other things really lent itself to going beyond visual art, so that we had lots of different means of expression. But I will say, like, the book club that started, and I think that started with Meditations and Revelations, which was a show about Christianity and interpretations within modern or contemporary artists using Christianity within their work. And we had a book club where we read The Red Tent, and that was so exciting to do, and just, I don't know, fed my soul a lot. And I think with Mirror Mirror on the Wall, we did a book club around the book She's Come Undone by Wally Lamb, which was also, those really stand out to me. So, and I think probably because after I did work in the gallery, I started to do books. So that is kind of the direction my career took. After I left the gallery, I started writing and illustrating children's picture books. And kind of honestly, when I look at Mirror Mirror on the Wall, that was my first exploration. Was I had my daughter, but then I was getting into reading picture books again. And I was looking at the ways we're teaching children. And then I thought, I want to do this. I want to have an influence through literature and imagery, which is such a great marriage. So I started writing and illustrating picture books. So after I left and I did that, I probably worked for about 8 years as a community artist or artist in resident while I was writing and illustrating picture books. I would go into schools and do large projects with students for a long period of time, or I'd work in the community doing workshops. Sometimes the work that I did with the students or with the community were used as illustrations in the book or books. There were multiples. And then I did a lot of like performance presentations. So I was taking some of the stuff that was in the gallery, like the music and the theater and the films and books, and kind of trying to create it for myself in my own personal world. And I absolutely loved that too. It was great fun. I had another child in that mix. And then, so I have 2 daughters actually. Now my youngest, who was born when I was at the gallery, is 15, and my oldest is 15, my youngest is 10. And when my 10-year-old was about 4, I decided she was going to school for the first time. And I thought, well, I could take on more of a full-time position because I was more like freelance for about 8 years. And so I started teaching in a high school, and I taught art for the last 5 years. I've taught art in the high school and middle school settings. And then this year I moved into a position at El Vernal College, where I am working as an assistant professor and the director of art education. So I'm really thrilled to be at El Vernal. It's where I got my teaching license. And I hope that I can continue to, teach that who I'm teaching now are students that are going to be art teachers. And I like that I have this background experience at the gallery because it's another way of teaching. It's museum education is very closely aligned with art education. So I think this background that I was able to accumulate over these 3 years at the Union Art Gallery was really, really valuable to me in how I learned to see myself as an artist, how I learned to see myself as a professional, and really how I kept creating after school was done, which I think is a really hard thing to do. So creating through your own work, but also creating through the kind of collaboration of others, which I really enjoyed.
There was another exhibition, right, for Out of Fashion? Yeah.
Oh, right. Yes. So
Sorry about that.
Out of Fashion. Oh, this was just my heart because I love wearable art. It's just everything. I love wearable art. And so I went on a trip. I was in Antwerp, Belgium, and I went to a fashion museum there. It must have been over like a spring break or summer. I can't remember, but I had seen an amazing show with Yinka Schonebeer, and it was just like blew me away. And I thought, I want to do this in the gallery, but on a smaller level. And so what was tricky, of course, is that, when you're doing wearable, you have to figure out how to display it. Like, do we have enough mannequins or dress forms and wig heads and all of that stuff? So that was tricky, but also, when I put a call out for the artist on that show, it was there. I think there was a lot of people that submitted stuff that was more fashion based instead of wearable art. And what ended up happening is we did a fashion show, which was kind of like a mix of both fashion and wearable art. And it actually worked out really well because then that brought that performance aspect into play. So we had the exhibition in the gallery. And then next door in the ballroom, we had like a runway show with a DJ and people walking down, and it was just great fun. I loved it. I put some of my old work in that show from undergrad. So it was a chance for me to show my work again too, I guess.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I was kind of pointing and I mouthed me too, but yeah, I love wearable art. I want to do a fashion show in the spring, hopefully. We'll be kind of working with local artists and Mount Mary students and alumni, everything like that. So yeah, I also very much love wearable fashion stuff, and I think textiles are very amazing. And yeah, and I think the binders that we have from the past, I think your shows are very well documented. So I feel like those shows I can connect to the most because there is so much is written about it. And I love what you said about wanting to reach out to people and make the space welcoming, and there's sort of art's coming to people rather than people having to come to art. And that's something I really care about too. And I loved reading through all of your programming events and all of the exhibitions you did, because it also felt like sort of a turning point in the history of the gallery in some ways. Like there had been shows before that had different theming and stuff, but there'd be kind of group shows surrounding a certain topic potentially, but I feel like your shows, because of the programming and everything that you added to it, like it was kind of a next step in the gallery concept that was kind of changing on a larger scale, but also you kind of made it in sort of an academic gallery space where you're kind of dealing with larger topics and trying to make that space inclusive as possible, which had happened before, but I just felt like your stint at the gallery sort of set that precedent. So it was great to hear from you. And
if I could give a little context, I mean, Andrea really did represent a change. So she was hired right before I started in late 2004 with the goal. The previous managers of the gallery had really been what are called at the university limited term employees. They were part-time, 19 hours a week. They weren't students, and it was really this change in terms of the practice of the gallery to have it be led by a student, by a graduate student in particular. And so when you see that as sort of represented in the work that Andrea did and that kind of came after, it's absolutely the case that's how that happened, that there was really a transformation, and the union director at that point really made that happen. He wanted that to be what was going on in the gallery, was to both make it bigger and more community-wide and really led by a student as well.
Yeah, nice. Thank you for that context. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Andrea, did you have anything else at the end? Otherwise, we'll move on.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for speaking.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, I'm Andrea Worthy, formerly Andrea Avery, I guess. And I apologize ahead of time as I'm being interrupted by a 3-year-old. Hold on one. Okay, we're gonna work through it. We have, it's a lot going on in our household, but so this show particularly, again, like Andrea, I was an MFA student. And so I was doing a lot of research at the time. And so, sorry, a lot of what I was doing was working with fabrics in my own work. And so I was really interested in what that looked like with what other artists were doing it at the time. And I started to see that it's obviously a predominantly female artists were featured, but there's quite a few men who were doing work too. But a lot of it was some of it was also a very masculine way of doing it. So like you look at David Cole, and we had a video of his, and he had these 2 men with cranes with these makeshift knitting needles, and they were knitting with these cranes an American flag. Or he made children's clothing out of Kevlar. So some of them were very political. Some of them were dealing with their own sexuality or heritage, or I don't know. It was really interesting to me how it was a very different take, I felt like, than of many of the women that I was looking at. And so, so this show kind of came together. It was bizarre in a lot of ways. I mean, we had like felt severed heads and blood, and some of the things it was war and violence. Some of them were there was these awesome superhero knitted costumes. And I think Mark Newport was the artist, and I thought those were really awesome because he talked about how like he wanted to be a superhero when he was a kid, and so he like made his own superhero outfit, so they were like man-sized, life-sized. So it was just one thing I think with the gallery that it really gave me the opportunity to do is, before I had come to grad school, I had thought of an art gallery as just a place to sell artwork. And what I think is amazing about the Union Art Gallery is that it's a place where students who may not have ever stepped into a museum or gallery before got to come in and experience something new. And I think also it gave the opportunity, because we weren't trying to sell work, we could do a lot of installation and experimental stuff that I think some people can't do. And that was really exciting when I started to see that. When I started at the gallery, I believe it was, I want to say 2008 or 2009. I was helping when Shannon Dose-Megan was a curator, and I helped with Just Seeds when they did their installation because they just needed some extra help. And it was mind blowing to me. Like, we're staying up till 1 a.m. helping cut a paper barbed wire fence that goes across the gallery. I mean, it was just, to me, it was so exciting to see a space used like that. And so I really tried to take the opportunity with the shows, not only to, things I was interested in, but also take the opportunity to learn about things I didn't know much about. So like some of the shows had performance art. I had no idea about performance art before I came to UWM. So it was really an awesome opportunity to kind of reach out to people and explore just those types of things where it gives you a space to do that in. Also, as I was in the program, I went on the path as well to do the anthropology museum studies program. And that was huge for me because, again, like many of people who have spoken, I didn't know much about labels, and I was learning as I was going, and thank God for Linda, because she was very patient with me as we went, and marketing and all of those things that were, very important. And those also played into what I went on to do afterwards. I think if you want to move on to the next show, there should be Watershed, I think, next. Yeah. So Watershed was different in the fact that I didn't curate the show, but I assisted with the show. It was, I believe, or correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, I think it was a grant that they were working on. It was with Nicholas Lampert and Raoul Deal.
That's right.
And I had the absolute privilege to be their assistant, both of their assistants, and as their TA. And they, whether they know it or not, they totally changed my world because they did so much community-based work that it was just mind-blowing to me how much they did. And I went back and looked through the catalog. That was also one of the first times I got to see how a catalog was put together. And they started the project really in the summer. I'm going to look here. I don't want to mix it up. In the summer of 2010, they started doing their installations and their community interventions. And then they also did later on in that fall silk screen workshops with Walnut Way and Bruce Guadalupe Middle School. So they were doing stuff there, and that was installed. And then they did most of their talks in January. And so this was also new in the fact that we are displaying like the aquaponics system was built there. And we did that with Growing Power, and I knew nothing about that. And I just said, okay, let's do it. We all said, okay. And then we didn't realize that there was like a University of Wisconsin, like rules for having live animals. And like, if they died, you had to catalog them. And the whole gallery, all the assistants had to go through like certification to like measure everything. We had to go in at like 1:30 in the morning to feed the fish. Like, I mean, it was just like the craziest thing. But it was super cool because it was just a different experience that people could have. And the food was actually growing in the aquaponic system. The top was lettuce. And so the top was lettuce. So I think at one point we even like served, I think, some of the food that was from there or something. Like, it was really neat. So after I was at the gallery, like I said, this influenced me, and I didn't realize how much it influenced me until much later. I was hired actually before I even graduated, which was really cool, by the Kohler Art Center. And I was hired as their community arts coordinator. And through that, I curated large projects that were funded by National Endowment for the Arts. And they were all community based. So we worked with artists and created stuff with the community from ideation, creation to completion. And I went on to work with a lot of the artists that I worked with in the gallery. So I still got to work with Swoon and Dennis McNett and Nicholas and just a lot of the people that I had met through there, I'm still friends with, or people I still meet up with. Fabiana Rodriguez, like, I mean, she just said, I just messaged her the other day because she has a t-shirt for Hispanic awareness, or at Old Navy for, so she just is doing a lot of really important work right now too. So I don't know, I guess it just, it influenced me a lot. And I was at the art center for quite a while, almost 5 years. And then I moved up north to be with my family. And so I kept my teaching license this whole time. I did teach at Lakeland College art history as well. But so I am teaching at a high school now and loving it. And obviously I have a small child who keeps interrupting in the midst of a global pandemic. So, but so I guess that in a nutshell, I mean, some of you know me, you know, I can talk forever. So I don't know if there's any more questions, or I know I'm missing stuff because I have tons of notes.
No, I don't think you're missing anything in particular. Sorry, I'm seeing a chat pop up. But yeah, no, I feel like when I guess because it was retrospective and I have to look at the history of everything, it's sort of now on a platter for me, so I can see kind of the different things everyone did, and like Watershed, you know, it's a pretty intense show because there's so many things going on, and with the catalog too, and all of that, just kind of interesting to hear about that. I think Selena said something about like classic UAG. I think probably from the someone hiking in the snow to feed the fish. But I think you know, kind of to the lack of limits in some ways to the gallery, because yeah, you can show a lot of really interesting work. It's not about selling it, it's about showing work to students and people in the community. And so there's lots of cool experiences you can have from that kind of art, for sure. Linda, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just remembering too that when Watershed opened, it was this kind of remarkable historical moment because it was the moment of the Wisconsin uprising. Scott Walker had just been, you know, in office as governor, and there was Act 10 had happened, and there were protests on a daily basis in Madison. And Lane Hall, whose piece you see here, the big chalkboard where he's sort of mapping out things, Lane was in Madison all the time, and he would come back on a weekly basis during the talks in the gallery and sort of report. It was, everybody was there both to hear the speakers that had been organized to come in and speak about such a different range of topics. And then there's Lane, who's really talking about, who's an artist also, who's talking about what's been going on in Madison and the resistance to what's going on in Madison. And to me, it was like, it really, like Andrea said, like there are times where you think, art is so much more sometimes than we think it is. It's everything. It's life. It's what's going on in society. It's like all these different, it's resistance. It's all of it. So that was fascinating to think about too.
It was a really great connection in that show as well, that, you know, Lane was there, of course, and there were so many different people from different sections. We had scientists. I mean, it was really cool to see how this all interconnected. And then also just to see, like you said, activism and, you know, right there, because that's what Watershed was based on. You know, it was based on talking about invasive species and privatizing water and industrial waste. And it touched on all of those things, and it was interactive. And I just think that was such a cool, one of the many cool things. I mean, the UAG to me is like, oh, you know, because there was so many cool things and such a cool community there. It ends up becoming family, you know. And I do have to say, the student shows also helped me. I do a lot of consulting now for public art, and then also like artist contracting stuff. So I just learned a lot from a ton of different aspects of it, and it was really influential in the projection of what I did afterwards. So I'm sad to see the space go, I have to say, but I'm excited to see what new things are going to happen as well. So.
Yeah, it'll be sad well, we'll be basically losing space and height, but we'll be maybe a little bit more centrally located. I don't know how everyone felt about sort of marketing to bring people in. I think Andrea mentioned about bringing people in, and that sometimes it's hard because we're kind of off in the corner. So I'm excited that we'll be a little bit more centrally located. So sort of walkers by will know we're there, because there's been times where people come in and be like, I've been here for 3 years and I didn't even know there was an art gallery. And, you know, hopefully that will let people know we're here. So yeah, it's kind of, you know, take what you can with what you can, but yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be a new page in the history book of that. So all right, next, Sophie. All right, Laura.
I will say one of the exhibitions that I don't think it was one of the ones I curated, but it was one I worked on. One of the artists had an installation in the show that had a fountain, and they very like passively said, oh, I might put a goldfish in there too, and Linda was just like, no, let's not do that. Like, it wasn't central to the piece, we're not going to do that. And now I know the history behind why we don't maybe want to do fish unless it's super important. So that's good to know. Hi, I'm Laura Sims Peck. I was at the Union Art Gallery, oh dear, I think 2014 and 2015 in that time period. And I was pursuing my master's in art history, and I did a certificate in museum studies when it was still offered through the art history department. I think it's a track now. And I was a gallery assistant for a year, and then I was a manager for the year, and did some shows there, which were fantastic. And I guess quickly after that, because of the work that I did at the Union Art Gallery, some collectors in Milwaukee had heard of some of the work I had done there, and that's how I got my first job after grad school, so it was pretty great. And I ended up working with them for 4.5 years. I'm managing their private collection that turned into Guardian Fine Art Services, and turned into, which is a art fine art services company in the Menominee Valley. And then they have a private museum there, the Warehouse. So I ended up curating there for a while with them. And it was all because they saw things I did at the Union Art Gallery. So it worked out really well. And now I am living in Madison. I work for the Center for Design and Material Culture at the university here in the School of Human Ecology. And I am the operations manager. And we have 2 exhibition spaces and a permanent collection. And I definitely use everything I learned at the Union Art Gallery pretty much daily there. So. And underestimated how much paperwork Linda probably did that I never realized. So thank you, Linda. So I'll talk about 2 of the shows that I did. This one is Bound and Beyond, and it was with Max Yella, who is the director of special collections at UW-Milwaukee. And it's all book art, and I didn't really know anything about book art. I just knew that he wanted to do an exhibition, so I went and met with him. And I think after 20 minutes of speaking with him about book art, I was totally hooked. He's so passionate. In fact, he's in one of these pictures. He's in the red shirt. You can see his back. That's Max, and he helped me select objects from the special collection. But what was really cool is the piece in the center, that ran the entire length of the gallery for the most part. And it was Kevin Burnett and Kristen Thielking, who they were at Stevens Point, I'm guessing they still are too. They're practicing artists, and they did this piece where it's these brass tongues, and on each tongue is a word from it's the American Regional Dictionary. And so it's really, really kind of reimagining what a book could be. It's a dictionary, but it's all these tongues. And the artists, that was a crazy night because we had to build that platform, and they didn't arrive until like 8 o'clock at night, and they got there and they're like, okay, we'll get started now. And I was like, I need to go home at some point. But we stayed really late, and we painted, and they built, and they did a great job. And we got this installed, and they really wanted to encourage people to touch the piece, which was opposite of pretty much everything else in that exhibition. So anything that was in the coves, we had vitrines on them. And then on the walls, that was my first time, and I was just telling actually colleagues about this the other day, because I work with a textile collection now, and that's also a very tangible medium that people really want to touch, and we don't want them to when it's on display. But the books, we used window alarms. I remember that, which is like the most like low tech way of doing it. That was awesome. And there's a few books in this show that I remember occasionally people would set off the window alarms because they touched them, and scared the bejesus out of them, but we knew. But the piece in the middle was definitely touchable. So I remember Max at the opening, just no one wanted to touch it. He just went through and started like smacking all of them, and they were moving, and then people got on board. But this was an example of kind of realizing, for curation for me, I hadn't really curated before this space, and realizing how wonderful it is to work with someone who is really passionate about the subject matter, and learn and kind of get to understand this, the medium, and helping them kind of see the exhibition come to life. So really, I was kind of working with them to make this show happen, and using kind of all the resources. I think I did this fall, so it was one of my earlier shows, and it was really overwhelming, but it was great. I think everyone could probably say that is the experience was overwhelming, but incredibly valuable. Working for the Union Art Gallery. We can talk about the next show too. Okay, so yeah, Nick's gonna talk about this one too. I think Nick and I are the only ones that are, Nick was my assistant manager, and then he became the manager. Does anyone else work together? I don't know. So Visualizing Sovereignty was my favorite show, and I still talk about it and use some things that I learned there. So my undergraduate university was really interesting in that it was built on the grounds of a Indian boarding school, and so because of that history of the university and how it became the University of Minnesota at Morris, there's a promise that any students who are Indigenous that went to school there could go there free tuition. And because of that, we had a lot of Indigenous students, and that was kind of my really first introduction to, I took courses in Indigenous studies. I took courses on Indigenous peoples and museums and kind of the histories there, and it really resonated with me and made it a very important aspect in even what I do today. In fact, with our collection right now at the Center for Design and Material Culture, we're working on a decolonization project of the collection. And when that was proposed, it was really important to me, and it's really important to the people that I work with, and we're working on those aspects as well. But this one was brought to me again by someone else, Bernard Purley, who is a professor. I think he's still a professor at UW-Milwaukee.
He's now at the University of Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
He's like the director of some really amazing Center for Indigenous Language.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So he was anthropology professor at UW-Milwaukee, and he is the one that presented this exhibition. And it was Visualizing Sovereignty, and it was all contemporary Indigenous makers. So we had paintings, prints. Bernard is an artist himself, so he did the center installation. And it was really an opportunity to discuss, what is sovereignty in today's landscape and what that really means. And I had the ability, I was really fortunate to partner with a bunch of other institutions on campus, different organizations, and bring in Bunky Echo Hawk. So he was someone that I learned about in my undergraduate university. Some friends of mine had brought him to campus, and I thought he was really great. He's also a poet, so he came to Morris and did a spoken word poem. And then he came to Milwaukee, and he did a live painting in the middle of the lobby there in the Union, and it was really wonderful. Like, as he was painting and creating this piece, he was talking with the students and asking them questions, and there was some really great dialogue about race and inequity and some of the histories of Milwaukee. Bunky's from Oklahoma, but he had done his research, and they really there's really great conversations that came about with that. And he was able to talk with some of the students on campus and kind of we had some other events for him that he went and spoke with. And it was great. I had heard about him and knew about him, and that was my first example of meeting an artist that I was really excited about, and he was very down to earth and very kind and very, very, very nice to work with. And after that, I will say, I think like a year after we had him at the Union Art Gallery, he was at the Milwaukee Art Museum. So Union Art Gallery had him first, so we win. But he was just really, really great to work with. And then we did bring in a dancer who works, he does powwows. And he did a great demonstration for us during our opening. That was nice. That's the photograph there as well. And visualizing sovereignty. I still think about some of the artists I work with. Julian Rickard, who ended up being who's just a amazing scholar, but I didn't know much about her at the time, and she was in the Minneapolis Institute of Arts exhibition a few years ago. That name is escaping me right now, but it was a fantastic show. So some of the artists that Bernard made those connections with, I was really fortunate to be able to work with them. And I would say throughout all of the exhibitions I did there, kind of echoing maybe what Josie said, as I was able to build relationships with artists in Milwaukee that I continue today. I was brand new to Milwaukee, so I moved there from Minnesota to go to graduate school. So I really did not know the area or the community very well. And my interest was in ancient and medieval art, actually. So working with contemporary art was completely new to me. Well, a little bit. I'd worked at the Walker Art Center, but in PR and marketing. And it was wonderful. It really, really helped kind of contextualize the art force that is in Milwaukee, and the really, really wonderful people that are the different galleries, the different exhibition spaces, and figuring out how to partner with them, but also the artists and helping them really kind of actualize their work and get it in a space and in a frame that makes sense to them, that I really enjoyed. And I guess that's some of what I did. I don't want to keep rambling. I don't know if you have any other questions, Emily, or if anyone has questions.
If I could just say, one of my very, very favorite memories of the Union Art Gallery is at this opening reception when the dancer led us all in a round dance at the end of the night. And I really was just afraid I was going to embarrass myself and start weeping because it was just so moving. Everybody, every single person in the gallery participated. It was pretty beautiful.
Yeah, he was great. He was so kind with his time and did such a great job of explaining the different dances and why they're done. It was great.
Yeah, that Linda, that reminds me too of Chantal's show when Chantal led us in a prayer, and then we tied, I think, ribbons or something around each other's hands, and it was kind of a beautiful, it wasn't super drawn out or anything, but it was just like a beautiful moment of togetherness, and kind of a beautiful artistic moment too. But yeah, thank you very much, Laura. I like what you were saying about kind of the local artists, because I feel like whenever I go back through the exhibitions, we've had a lot of amazing national, international artists, but it's always really special to have local, especially alumni artists back to show their work, because there's an amazing art scene in Milwaukee, and it's really great that we get to be on the cutting edge of bringing people in, and like you said, you brought Bunky first or whatever, I feel like the Union Art Gallery can do that in a lot of ways that maybe other galleries can't, and I've always really appreciated that throughout my time working here, meeting the artists and getting to show that kind of work that's being made right where we're at. So it's very cool.
It's a very agile space, so we're able to respond very quickly to the needs of maybe what the students are thinking about, or what some of the artists are thinking about in the community, which is nice. I will say, I didn't realize that it was LTE and then it became student run. I didn't know that history either, and I cannot think of a better experience for a student. That's the thing that I use. Even I'm the operations manager, but how to source acrylic. I still use the same people that I used when I learned about them at the Union Art Gallery. How to, how to install. I painted a line in this one of our shows just now, and when our preparator was out, and I think he was happy I didn't ruin it. But I learned how to do things like that from the Union Art Gallery. It was an experience. It was my favorite experience of graduate school, like being able to have all of that hands-on experience and really work with students and kind of help them figure out what they're interested in too. It was
definitely. I don't know. I don't know if you ever went to any of the Amg conferences. So the Academic Association of Museums and Galleries, sort of thing. I probably did not say that right. Anyway,
no, you're right.
But okay. The cool thing about when we went there, and we said, our curator and manager is a student, and the assistant manager, and all these people down the line, our students. No one else that we talked to ever there. Yes, thanks, Linda. Also had that experience. Maybe students were docents, maybe they were like assistants to a curator potentially, but never doing all of that work. And it's an amazing experience. You learn so much that you just can't learn in class, and that you practically can't learn in a lot of other scenarios. So yeah, it's definitely unique and very cool. All right, thank you, Laura, again, and we'll go on to, I think, Nick's next. Yes, cool.
All right, so my name's Nick. I feel like Laura half introduced me already. So I was her assistant manager. I was in the art history department, so I had kind of the same track as her in the museum studies with that certificate at the time. And I started in, I think 2014 or 2015 as Laura's assistant manager. I feel like she brought up in class that she was looking for an assistant manager, and I volunteered. And it was a great experience. Like everyone else has said, I learned so much in my time there and got to be involved in a lot of amazing shows. Just the amount of artists that we'd see in any given year is just kind of amazing in that space. So yeah, and then after graduating, I worked a few different jobs, but then got kind of back into the art world through Laura again. She got me a job working at Guardian Fine Art, which she kind of already explained. So it's a fine art services company in the Menominee Valley, and we do like storage, transport, installation, kind of all aspects of art, which the Union Art Gallery kind of uniquely prepares you for that, because one day you're driving to pick up artwork at Madison, and then you're unpacking it, and then you're installing it the next day and reaching out to artists and doing paperwork. So I still get to do all that fun stuff. Lots of installing different complicated pieces. I still do that. And obviously my time at the Union Art Gallery, I got to do a lot of that as well. So I learned a lot of good problem solving. Going into the exhibitions that I worked on, I was Laura's assistant manager for Visualizing Sovereignty. She already explained quite a bit about it. It was one of the fall exhibitions, so she had done a lot of the curation and planning before I came aboard, because most of you know, the curator works through the summer, and then everyone else kind of shows up in the fall and gets up to speed. So my involvement with the exhibition was a lot of the installation and then helping with the programming. The Bunky Echo Hawk performance, that was just a perfect event for the Union. I think, as a lot of us said, being kind of away in a corner, people miss us. But when you have Bunky standing in the middle of the lobby doing a painting, it just draws attention and draws eyes, and everybody's interested in what's happening. And it was like, maybe there were 20 people there when the event started, but by the end there were 50 students kind of milling around. And then the fact that the piece that he created got to be part of our permanent collection and kind of live on. And it was just, I think, like I said, just a perfect event for the Union Art Gallery. And then the other part of that show that I kind of, just thinking back on it, that I remember really well was I got to help install a piece with Truman Lowe, who has since passed away, but he was just an amazing artist. It was back in one of the coves, and his work is a lot of, like, it's made out of wood, like found objects, and it was suspended in the air in one of the coves. And it's such a weird space to curate sometimes, with all those, like, the weird different spaces and you don't know how to use everything. But that was just a great example of like the perfect piece when it hung back there and it really filled the space well. And he was so incredibly generous with his time and just kind to us. Sometimes when you're a student, you kind of expect people to maybe like not treat you as much of a professional or to talk down to you, but he answered like all our questions and he was so kind and generous with his time. And so that was just a really great experience. Yeah, so I think you can move on to the next show. All right, so this one was the second show I curated as the manager, inspired The Power of Art and Faith. So the idea for this show started because one of the speakers in the Distinguished Lecture Series that fall was Ibu Patel, and he led a group for students for interfaith communication. And the idea was that on campuses, I think a lot of times people don't want to talk about religion or don't want to step on anybody's toes about it. And I think his big thing was to get people talking about it in a really like understanding and respectful way. And so that was kind of the genesis of this show. Was I think one of Linda's assistants, and I forget her name, but she brought up the idea of doing this and I thought it was really interesting. And then it was also a show of just local Milwaukee artists. When I first started the union, I didn't really have any curation experience before either. And going into it, it seemed overwhelming to do a solo show, to ask an artist to commit that much work to fill a whole gallery. So I ended up doing a lot of group shows, which in hindsight was a lot of work. This show I think had 13 artists, which it was really great to have that many artists, but it's also 13 sets of paperwork and 13 emails to get out. And but it ended up being really great because the first show I did was artists kind of regionally and throughout the US. And so most of my communication was done via email or over the phone. And then for this show, being local artists, I had the opportunity to visit a lot of their, oh yeah, Laura was the assistant's name. That's why I couldn't remember. There's too many Lauras. But I had the opportunity to go visit a lot of the artist studios and they invited me into their homes to see their artwork. A lot of the artists I met, Linda recommended I reach out to Della Wells. And so I got to spend a day with Della, kind of going around Milwaukee and going into people's homes and seeing their artwork. And that was during the summer too. So there's, like I said, in the summer when you're the curator and you're working alone in that gallery all day, it can get a little lonely. And then one day it's driving around with Della and into people's living rooms, looking at their artwork. And I met some really amazing artists that way. One of them who really stood out was Rosemary Olsen. She was just incredibly sweet. She took me into her home, which is, it's like, her apartment was just amazing. It was like an art installation in itself. Like every surface is covered and it was amazing. And she's actually been in a ton of shows since she showed with us, and you see her all over the place now. And I remember at the end of the show, she like hugged me and she was like, "When you're a famous curator, don't forget about me." And I just like laughed. And now in hindsight, it's like, she's the one who's really doing amazing things. And I'm super happy for her. And yeah, I guess kind of building off of that, in my time since I've been at the union, now being at Guardian, I'm still very much like in the Milwaukee art scene, and I see all these same artists. I see them all over the place. When I'm in people's houses installing work, I'll be like, "Oh, it's one of Barbara's pieces." And it's just like, it brings me back to my time. And yeah, so I don't know if you had any other questions.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I don't think I've explained exactly what pieces I brought back per show.
Sure.
But since I was doing sections, I only asked for a couple pieces. But there's a piece not from the original show, but by Rosemary Allison, in a similar style to those drawings that were in the original show. And then the Chant 2 by Nirmal is also in the retrospective. So yeah, we worked with Nirmal a lot, and I've never met Rosemary, but Linda always tells me that if I ever get a chance, I need to go to her house. So
Yeah, for sure.
maybe one day that would be really cool. yeah, and I think in my email to you, I had asked sort of what was how did you define faith? And when you were like sending out the call for this art, since it encapsulates a lot of different relationships to faith and religion, how did you kind of conceive of that or kind of think through that when you were looking for art within the theming?
Sure. So going into it, I mean, faith is like a very personal thing. And this was one where I tried to kind of like keep myself out of it. And I really saw my role as trying to find a diverse group from a lot of different backgrounds, and diverse also in the type of art they were creating or how their art related to faith or religion. Some of it is, very literally taken, like some of them are working in an old style. There was somebody who did icons and he had trained in the traditional way of painting them. And then some people, it was much more abstract. I have the names of all the artists, so I got to remember. Oh, Mike Newhall, he was a Buddhist artist, and he had the row of like the monks' heads down the center, the sculptural pieces. And so those were much more kind of conceptual, like not abstract, but yeah, just more like conceptual pieces. So addressing faith in a totally different way. I think with a lot of my shows, when it was something that I really wanted the artist's interpretation to show through, I really tried to stay out of the way.
Mhm.
So I did a show of artists who were military veterans as well. And I'm not a veteran myself. So I really didn't feel like I had a lot that I wanted to like put in the foreground of the show, but I just wanted to get a interesting collection of people and an interesting collection of art and kind of let it speak for itself. So that was really what I tried to do for this show as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Nick. And I think we'll go to Selena.
Hi. My name is Selena Clark. I was Selena Erdman when I was working with the Union Art Gallery. And so I sort of came to the Union Art Gallery in Milwaukee in general, pretty new to the area as well, like some of the managers here. I'm from Wisconsin originally, from like north of Madison area, but I didn't spend a lot of time in Milwaukee. So getting to know the art scene there, it was a totally new experience and something that I really cherished during my time was getting to know the artists. And everyone's kind of talked about it a little bit, but what a special community, arts community that Milwaukee is. It is a good experience to be introduced to that and get to be a part of it for a little while. So coming into the Union Art Gallery, I was started my master's in art history, the museum curation track. Prior to that, I was also focused in art history, but also anthropology. And so I liked looking at art through a cultural lens and just like art as influenced by like everything around us, what's happening in our context of our time, politically, culturally, socially, all of those things kind of combined in that. But it was a very historical focus. So starting at the Union Art Gallery was eye-opening to me for like what the arts community can be and what it can be like working with artists that are making art currently and responding to these things as they're happening. Some of the exhibitions that I worked with that I won't talk about as much, but just to touch on them lightly, like Fos de Resistencia was one that we did, and it was focused on political and activist art and posters and printmaking. And we worked with groups that were protesting even at the time in Milwaukee. So that was really cool and really special to be a part of those like current movements that were happening. So this first exhibition, India Inked, I actually was not the curator for it. That was Savannah. And I was the assistant manager. This was sort of that last exhibition before I transitioned into the manager role. So I don't have much that I can add about the curation and planning of this exhibition, but one thing that I really valued with it was getting to be introduced to all of these artists from across the world. We brought in artists, some local and some sort of pseudo-local, Chicago area, but also we had art flown in from India. And so getting to see artwork that otherwise there would have been no way to see this. So it was such a cool thing that the Union Art Gallery can do. Again, I think someone talked about the sort of limitless, not limitless with all the different rules around the union and the university system, but relatively speaking, limitless support of ideas and these far-reaching connections that we can make and pull in art from India just for this exhibition, and to have like a Zoom talk with, it wasn't Zoom then, but a talk that involved some of those artists from afar was really special. One of the big pieces that I remember that was really interesting, there isn't a photograph of it here, but right when you walked into the gallery, there were these doors, or they were made to look like doors, screen printed. And a really cool experience was, I actually was one of the people that drove down this giant Penske truck down to Chicago to this artist studio, and it was, you know, in downtown Chicago. So we're driving in these like kind of tight streets, lots of traffic, and we get to this artist studio, and it was so like magical to be transported and get to walk into his space and to bring these huge pieces up into the gallery and get them installed as if they were actual doors to be able to walk through. It was a really interesting and fun experience. So that kind of was a great experience for me, getting to do some of those things, like all of the aspects, like everyone is talking about, from the paperwork to the art pickup, the handling, the installation. You have a hand in every single aspect, which is really neat. You can go to the next exhibition. So this exhibition happened during my time as the curator. I helped put this together with Adolph Rosenblatt's family as a retrospective. And all of these pieces are quite heavy and sort of larger than life. And so the installation of it was really something that was incredibly interesting and time intensive and a total learning experience. Some of the sculptures, I think, they range from like 300 pounds to 700 pounds individually. And so a huge part of this was getting the work to the gallery and then also doing restoration work on some of the pieces. We went down to where the artwork is being kept, and both of Adolph's sons, Eli and Josh, were there to help us work through what was in the space, making our selections with what might be available. It was this huge coordination effort too with the pedestals. You know, what size pedestals do we have? What can we accommodate? And they had a lot of pedestals that were custom made for everything. So that was great to be able to use that. And then because some of the pieces had been stored for so long, a couple of them needed quite a bit of restoration work. And both Eli and Josh were able to teach us how to restore them and work with us. And so we got to do some of that hands-on restoration work, which is another really amazing experience, getting to see this kind of other side of gallery work, and not even really normal gallery work, but getting to experience art installation in this way. It was very different. So that was also really cool. And we also had a friend of the family, Davey Noble, who did he had done all this moving of these sculptures too throughout the time whenever they were exhibited. So he was a huge help. We spent 2 or 3 days, all of us, long hours lifting these sculptures, taking them down a freight elevator and putting them onto this huge van, getting them to the gallery, getting them offloaded at the gallery. It was quite the experience. It was long hours, but it was so worth it. And I think something really special about this exhibition too was getting to be a part of the legacy of this amazing artist who was so much a part of the Milwaukee community. Like a lot of his sculptures were of community members, people in Milwaukee, and the biggest one in the middle was this place that had closed down. So it was a sort of a beautiful memory and time capsule of this sort of like very culturally important space in Milwaukee. And it was great to see. I think this exhibition, I think some people have talked about it a little bit, getting outside people into the gallery and getting just people into the gallery in general. So this was a really cool opportunity to pull in so many members of the community and get them in to see this work. It was a really special celebration of this artist's life and work. So I think everything that I did at the Union Art Gallery really shaped what I do now. I work in an art gallery now. I live in Seattle and I work at Copland Del Rio Gallery, and it's a small gallery. It's just me and two other women that run it, and we are hands-on in everything all the time. And I think when I first started working with them, they were like, oh, can you do this thing? And I was like, yep, I've done that before. Oh, I've done that before. I've done that. And they were always like, really? Just because you do get to see all aspects of it, and you get hands-on from restoration to installing to handling, shipping coordination, paperwork and curation. All of these different aspects of working with art and artists are things that I had experience doing and things that I carry with me and use every day. So it was a really wonderful experience. And it's one of the most valuable things that I took. I think Laura said it too. One of the most valuable things about her graduate education, it was mine too. I was still in the art history program and I really loved it and I loved everything about it. But this experience at the Union Art Gallery really shaped my career and what I see myself doing today. So it was really monumental. But if you have any specific questions, I can talk, but otherwise that's what I have.
Yeah, thank you, Selena. If anyone has a question. Sorry, I didn't want to talk over anyone. No? Okay. Well, we'll have a little time at the end too. But yeah, thank you, Selena. And I don't know if you remember me, but you had sent out a call to different people for doing the restoration. And I answered the call. I don't remember how I found out. I must have seen it somewhere, but I answered the call for that. So I was there for a couple days helping doing the restoration. And this time around I got to see Eli they moved some of the pieces to Antiques on Pierce. And I know too, as I understand it, like the lunch counter was sent to the was sent directly to the museum after this exhibition. Is that right?
I believe it went right to the Museum of Wisconsin Art.
Right? Yeah, cool. But yeah, I remember doing the restoration and just being so amazed that I could have that opportunity and that the gallery provided that, and it was super cool to meet Josh and learn. I think I even had to, I remember epoxying things was the most stressful because you didn't want something, it smelled like something bad was happening, and it was just like, I don't want to mess this up. But I also think I had to color match paint for one of them too, and that was so stressful, but also like amazing, because when do you really get that opportunity, right?
I think something that I learned too is like the different kind of artists that you work with and their different mediums, they approach their artwork so differently. And like ceramic artists in particular, and like sculpture artists, maybe not as a general rule, but in my experience, are so much less precious about their work. And they're like, oh, this thing broke, here, I'm gonna fix it. Or here, let me show you how to fix that real quick, no problem. And it was it's so interesting to be able to meet so many people that work in so many different ways and to learn from them.
Yeah, like, because there's the curation and there's the install, and then there's like art handling experience you learn, and like how to frame stuff sometimes. Like we have like a mat cutter, and yeah, there's just so many different skills that you have to come across, and some that you don't anticipate, but then now you're doing that now, and now you know how to. And
I had never installed vinyl. I had never used InDesign or Illustrator before, and so like I use that stuff every single day, and I've like built on the skills, of course. Like I'm a pro in InDesign and now, and I do all of our marketing for the gallery here, and I never would have been able to do any of that, or even like know where to start if I hadn't had all of this like accumulated random experience and this like faith placed in me to be able to learn and get something done and make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. All right, thank you, Selena. We'll go on to Madison.
Hi, everybody. I'm Madison. I worked with both Emily and Selena, so it's great to hear the conversations. So a little about me now. I work as a collections coordinator for academic engagement at the Penn Museum in Philadelphia. Super long title, but basically I work with objects from all over the world, you know, hundreds and thousands of years ago, and I bring them out for classes and for students to do their research, and for professors to come and kind of understand the objects better so that they can teach their history and anthropology and fine arts classes and stuff like that. And I definitely think without a question, working at the Union Art Gallery landed me that job because I got to work with students, and that was the big connection. So I'm conscious that we are close on time. Emily, if you need to cut me off, please do so. I'm going to talk a little bit about Turning Pages, Social Justice in Book Art, which is the last exhibition I did at the gallery. There's so much to say about this exhibition, and I'm kind of happy that Laura talked about her book show, because I had seen the marketing from her show and was like, I want to do book art. And people were like, oh my gosh, don't do book art. It's so complicated to display. And immediately that was a challenge I wanted to kind of conquer. And then at the time too, a lot of the students were talking about how a lot of printmakers and book artists don't get their own shows. You know, it's all about painting or photography or something like that. So again, I was like, nope, we're going to do this. We're going to do book art. And it just so happens that on campus, we have the UWM Special Collections Library that has a huge collection of artist books, like Laura talked about, and Max runs that collection. And really, if you don't like book art, after a conversation with Max, I don't know how. And Turning Pages, Social Justice and Book Art, you know, I had a lot of hopes for it. And I think as you start to install a show and you plan a show, your hopes and your thoughts kind of change a little bit, and not necessarily in a bad way. I went in originally thinking, like, let's try to stick with 3 main themes, like maybe environmentalism, you know, women's issues. We'll talk about, you know, the prison industrial complex or something like that, you know, something very specific. And then you see the collection and you get talking with Max, and those kind of go out the window. And you want to talk about everything, because that's really what that collection is. It's a little bit of everything. And you know what? It's stuff from international artists. You know, in the show, there were books from women in the Middle East. You know, we had books from people on the West Coast. I think we had tons of local artists, even UWM professor artists that had donated their books to the collection. I think I saw Evelyn Patricia Terry's on the call, and she also was in the show because she had a book in the collection. So that's a really interesting connection. And something I probably didn't give Max enough credit on is I feel like he kind of curated the show because you go and you see this huge collection, and I think Max kind of wants you to come in as a curator with like a specific idea, and you see the collection, you start talking to Max, and there's no way to kind of like hone in on one topic. So as Max is like talking about these artists and talking about, oh, this person, you know, they're a really good friend of mine and they do this beautiful work on this subject, and you know, this is how they painstakingly like make this paper. I'm like writing down these names because like that's definitely going in the show, because Max is telling me all this really interesting stuff about these specific pieces. And I know Max has his favorites, but we also wanted to show art and book art that hadn't been shown before, you know, that people didn't really maybe know these artists, but their work is amazing. So we wanted to showcase that. Some of the pictures on the slide. So there's a main view kind of on the left side where you see on the back wall. And we really wanted to show Stopper piece. So this was a collection of kind of posters by Carl Pope. And I think the name of it is The Bad Air Smelled of Roses. And this is a really amazing collection of basically sayings. It's about sort of the representation of Blackness in society. And it's supposed to be quotes from music, from newspapers, from movies. And Carl has put them on these really amazing printed papers. And I remember talking with the staff, you know, how do we display this? How are we going to display this? Emily was there. I ended up doing a lot of research on Carl and found that he had installed that piece himself at the Cleveland Museum of Art. So we kind of took their idea and tried to mimic it because we thought that's probably what Carl would have wanted, how it would be displayed. So that was definitely a showstopper. As you walk by the gallery, as you walk into the gallery, you immediately saw that piece. And part of the show too was, like Laura said earlier, to question kind of what a book is. You know, it doesn't have to be sort of this set of pages between two ends of the spine. It can be posters on the wall. It can be, you know, in this sort of accordion format. In the back corner, you probably can't see it, but there's actually a body bag, and on it is instructions on how to sort of use that body bag, how to open it and stuff like that. It's really funny too, is that we had it out and displayed and we put a mannequin in it because we thought that would kind of fill the piece out and that's how it would be displayed. You know, a lot of this stuff, we're just trying to make assumptions on how the artist would have wanted that displayed. Because this is coming from a collection, it's not coming directly from an artist. And Max walked in and he's like, what's that? Where's that from? And we're like, it's from the special collections. He had never opened it. He had never had anything in it to kind of fill the shape of it. So that was really exciting for him too. I think he was like, oh, if we ever display that again, I'm going to borrow your mannequin. That is really cool and really powerful. And the picture on the right, I just wanted to show how many pedestals it takes to show book art. I remember telling the staff, pull out every single pedestal you can find. So that is every single pedestal that the Union Art Gallery has. And we painted them, and it's sort of impossible to plan a book art install before you get the book art and the pedestals in the room. So I remember just honestly asking Max for more books than I knew we could display, because I wanted to sort of be able to rearrange the books as we went. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I remember too, we had to go pick up the really big one that was over at the Art Center Gallery.
Yeah, that's actually in the left-hand picture. And we borrowed that from, I think, the art department. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I remember that was a fun day of moving things.
Part that you don't see in this photo is we actually asked a class, a book art class is happening at the same time as the exhibition. We asked them to submit their own pieces. So this is the last show of the school year. They had all semester to kind of work on their pieces, and they each had a page of the book where they talked about a social justice topic that was important to them. And it was so inspiring to see their designs, and a lot of them use poetry in their work. And we actually ended up purchasing the piece from the class at the end to put into the collection at the Union Art Gallery.
I know it's 8:35. So if anybody needs to go for whatever reason, I understand. I don't know if anybody, I know Madison also was going to talk about the thing that we worked on, which was sort of putting up art in the Union. Do you want to speak to that just really quickly, Madison? Sorry to cut you
I
off.
can do it at the end if people have questions for the other curators. I'll stick around.
Okay, cool. You can send it in the chat too. Any questions at all? You can unmute yourselves now. I made it so you could do that if you wish.
I have a question for all the other curators. Is there like one piece of advice or one thing that you learned doing this that you kind of carry with you still? Like I have a few things that I think of. Anyone?
I think a lot of things, but one of the really most valuable things was the collaboration, and just like being able to work with all of like, you know, the whole staff of the Union Art Gallery, but also these other curators and artists, and the power and beauty of collaboration when it's done well, and getting to share a vision and make something appear from that. That's one of the huge things that I carry from it. So I think a piece of advice would just be like to embrace that and really make those connections with the different people in the community and artists, and reach out to people and see what can happen, because you get such beautiful shows from so many beautiful ideas that you pull together. That was my favorite part.
This one's kind of an odd one, but it kind of goes on what you all were talking about earlier with kind of being the only like student run gallery that we really know of. I work with a lot of like, even though I work at a university museum, and I work with tons of students, and that's what I do, and that's my department. I also work with other departments who sort of have never worked in that space before, and they maybe aren't so supportive of students having these awesome roles where they can be curators and they can work with art and artists and do these large projects. And I just think, you know, working at the Union Art Gallery, I see how much like students can do and can accomplish, and the really neat stuff that, you know, students can bring together these projects and these partnerships. So I think what I really learned is that to advocate for students, you know, to make sure that students have these opportunities to grow, to develop their careers, and to always kind of encourage that, even though some people might not.
Yeah, I would add, I totally agree with that. There was many instances where I thought like, oh, I couldn't ask this artist because they're too big or something like that, you know, and then I just was encouraged to do it anyways, you know, and then all of a sudden there was people that, like many people have mentioned, like we had people in the Union Art Gallery before they were at the Milwaukee Art Museum or before they were at Kohler, or, you know, it was really amazing to see the caliber of artists. And what I also loved is bringing in local artists to be right next to them too. So I did a lot of group shows. So I was always trying to think about what local artists would go with these internationally known artists or nationally known artists. And I think that was just a really awesome opportunity to bring those people together, but also like you were talking about cross collaboration with different departments and, you know, public programming. Those are all things that I ended up doing a lot of when I went on to work at Kohler. So it was really important to see, you know, I felt like we were kind of translators, like for how do the general public see artists, or or translate the artwork, or for the artist to translate to the public. And I felt like I really had to do that as the community arts curator and artist in residency curator. So yeah, I just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, to build on what you said, Andrea, I really felt like in the time that I was in the Union Art Gallery, I realized what a valuable doorway the gallery and the exhibitions and the programming was to welcome people from the community, and both artists and non-artists. For some people, the exhibitions that they visited were their first and only connection to the university. And it really was this way to engage the broader community with art and with UWM. And it also was a place where people from different departments and interests from different departments could come together and overlap. So it was this really cool meeting place and collaboration place, and a place where you could all learn from each other and share your own areas of expertise. And it was a great way to, like you were saying, promote local artists and promote student artists and give them these opportunities that would help further their career as well. And ultimately, when I got out of grad school and I got the job at MyEd, it was in part because of my experience at the Union Art Gallery, and some of the people on the hiring committee remembered me and the work that I had done there. So they were like, this is what we need, you know, for director of community outreach, because it was such a community outreach kind of work that we did.
One of the things that strikes me is I feel like as someone that's worked in the union now for about 16 years, I think that the Union Art Gallery and UWM and the Student Union is really, should be really appreciative of the union directors that we've had. And I just think that as we've seen this around the country, that galleries have closed, just like craft centers have closed or whatever, but the directors that I have worked with, the union directors, have been incredibly supportive of the Union Art Gallery, have always wanted to make sure that it remains and that it thrives. And so Scott Gore, who was here when I started, was a huge supporter of the arts, and Rick Thomas, who's been here now for, I honestly don't know, 10, 12 years, has bought work practically every student exhibition to add to the collection, has made sure that in the union renovation project that is going on now, you know, there might have been an opportunity to close the gallery because there were people that came after our space for years and years that really wanted that space for other uses. But we will continue to have a space in the union. It's a more visible, it will be a more visible location than we've had in the past. And so you can't underestimate the importance of leadership that is supportive of the arts and supportive of the job opportunities, the work experience that it provides to students, the support for the student artists at the university. I just think we're incredibly lucky to have these people who've been in these roles over the years.
Hi, this is Evelyn, and I just wanted to thank you all. It's wonderful. I learned a lot about everybody, and it's wonderful that you've been able to go on and do so much because of working in that area. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Yeah, so.
Evelyn, I remember working with you back in the 80s on an exhibition called Erotica, Women Sexual.
Yeah, that's great. I remember that one especially.
Yeah. National Juried Show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Evelyn has a long history with the gallery too, curating here as well with Erotica and a lot of other shows. And I'm sure has a lot of insight too of that time period. And I know when you visited, Evelyn, we were kind of, you were like, oh wow, that's another show I did, and you were looking at the marketing for that, and everything. So yeah, you're another person that I bet has a lot of interesting things to say about the exhibitions you've worked on here as well.
I might have interesting, I just like doing it. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if I have observations, but when I attended the opening for the exhibition you have up now, I noticed that one show and I said, I have to come back and look because I don't even remember all the exhibitions over the years. So I'm excited that I got to listen to all of this. I have to tell Della and Rosemary.
I remember the show that you worked on with Andrea Skyberg, Evelyn. There was the joint project where Andrea Skyberg brought in Joyce Scott, and then you did the women's. It was at the African American Women's Center. Is that right?
Yeah, that was very interesting to have it in conjunction with a community organization.
Andrea has it.
Yes, that was great.
That was amazing.
That was an amazing show.
And there were people from
catalog of it. And I thought, wow, this was so cool that you did this. So I'm glad that you're here too to talk about that.
Well, thank you. It was great. And this is recorded so people can access it?
Yes, it'll be up on our YouTube channel either tomorrow or Saturday. We'll have it up. We'll have it edited and sent up and everything. So yeah.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Evelyn. Okay. It's 8:46. I mean, I'm cool to hang out with people as long as they're here. So whatever everyone wants to do. But Madison, did you want to jointly just briefly talk about the display project?
Yeah, and I would love it too if Emily and Linda and anybody else who worked on this at the gallery, if you want to jump in anywhere, go for it. I will say to everybody else listening, I didn't start this project. This was here already from another couple sort of art gallery managers before me. But I think we tried to sort of expand where we displayed the student art collection. So as most of you know, we have a student art collection at the gallery. And when I was there, you know, I had Emily there, who is my intern for the summer, and we did a lot of collections management. And as part of that too, we wanted to find pieces where we could display throughout the union, because I think at the time, maybe the union was going through sort of a campaign to try to redo the union. Yes. And it didn't exactly pass. So we wanted to try to beautify areas of the union, not with sort of more necessarily Panther logo things, but some of art from student artists that we had bought that the directors at the union had, purchased from students to try to grow this collection and display it. So some of these pictures you see in the image, this is this kind of larger image with the students sitting at the tables. That's just directly outside of the union. So that was also a way, outside of the gallery. That was also a way, like you were walking by and you see artwork. And if you'd never been over to that sort of corner where the gallery was, we were hoping that would kind of lead you farther to get to the gallery so you could see the gallery. The main image sort of at the bottom, there's a scissor lift down there. And this is actually in the stairwell leading up to the third floor offices. And some of you who had been there recently might recognize this piece. This is a piece by Shantala Kamanavan. It's a really amazing, huge piece. So we had to find sort of a huge place to display it. And I remember we had to have sort of a permanent way to display these things because we wanted them to be up for years to come. And that we actually, I think me and Emily had to contact Shantala and get his permission to put eyelets in the corners and sort of screw the piece into this cement wall on the third floor. So maintenance by the end of this project loved us. Emily, do you have anything to say about that?
About putting up the work and stuff like that, or just in general? Yeah, I mean, Yeah, it was exciting to come in as an intern and then sort of be part of this big project that everyone who goes in the union sees a little bit of, and trying to the piece on the far left with 2 students in front of it, that's on the 3rd floor. So like we have stuff on the 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and do we have ground floor? Maybe.
I thought we had
Yeah.
plans to, if not.
We did. We were going to go in the resource centers, and then COVID hit and everything else. But anyway, but on most of the levels of the union, yeah, we have artwork up, stuff we just, there's so much amazing work, and it's sad when it has to be in the back, and no one gets to see it. So it's been really cool to get to have all that up. And then Leah here in the kind of middle part, who's doing this by, that's her work. So she was working at the gallery at that time. Maybe she just left, but she had worked at the gallery. So it was cool to kind of put up her work and put that up. And in addition to the work that we maybe, a big part of the project was also researching. So sometimes you don't know all the information about everything, or even sometimes who the person was. So it was cool to get to dig into multiple archives to try to puzzle out all that information, in addition to just getting to put the pieces up and tell the artists their artwork was up in the union. And that was really exciting. So yeah, when I don't know if I finished my thought, but coming in as an intern and getting to work on this project was really rewarding and taught me a lot really quickly about like collection stuff and kind of how to manage this project. I felt like Madison modeled how to manage a project very well. And I appreciate that because it was great guidance at the time. So yeah.
Emily really made a difference during the pandemic when we all went home and were trying to figure out a way that we would still have a presence in the daily lives of students at UWM, of doing collections highlights that we were posting on a regular basis on social media last year, so that they would choose pieces out of the collection and tell a story about the artists, what the work was about, and so forth. So it was this really great way to see art history students kind of researching and putting out work, and also making sure that there was still this connection between the gallery and the campus community. It was really great. The other thing I'd say, so Leah is with her pieces that were in the hallway, but then Leah's piece on the ceiling is also in the bottom left-hand corner. And one of the things, just to say something like really special about Madison. Madison was one of those people where I would say occasionally, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? Like if we could commission an artwork that would maybe bring some attention down the hall to where the gallery is. And a week later, Madison would show up with like a call for artists. What do you think about this? And then she'd run the whole project, and it would be like, yes, that's excellent. How great is that? So I just think that, as Emily said, Madison really showed us how to get things done, in just a really, truly creative way and a student-centered way. It was just great.
All right, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Madison. Sorry, Madison, were you gonna say something?
No, I was just gonna throw out there that, getting able to work on this project was awesome. It's definitely like my go-to project to talk about, with other museum professionals at conferences, job interviews, whatever it is. This is what people are like, whoa, you guys did all that? You got a sculpture outside on the ceiling of the gallery. Like, it was really amazing. So I hope that with all the union renovations and stuff, some of this stuff can kind of stay up or be moved to the new areas.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we know just yet. I don't think we do. I don't think most people know. It's, we're kind of, everyone's trying to figure out plans for this sort of big project going on, the renovation project. But I don't know if I talked to you, Madison, about like what the new gallery is gonna be. So the wall, the big picture here, that wall will be part of the gallery because we'll be moving into where that computer lab section is, and then it'll be, my understanding is there'll be sort of an L wall put up where there isn't a wall right now, and then it'll be an enclosed space. So I imagine just because of debris, even if the wall's not coming down, we'll probably take down pretty much all of the artwork in the interim. But I have every intention of bringing it back, and Sophie, my assistant manager, also would bring stuff back too. So I think it'll live on, it even if it's in different ways. But I think the way it worked and how everything is up set a good precedent for continuing that. And now it just feels like the union would be so weird without all the art up that we put up. So I think that will continue even if we have to change walls or where things end up being. But yeah, I think it'll work out if I have any say in it. And I think Linda too. So yeah. Cool. All right. We are almost to 9 p.m. So sorry to keep anyone here longer than they need to be, but thank you, everyone. I know there were some people here earlier as well. It was good to see some people here for the talk, and thank you to all the speakers. Thank you so much for being here and talking about your experiences at the gallery and kind of where you are now. It's really cool to get to meet all of you. I've seen your names in all the things I've been researching for the retrospective, and I know some of you as well, so it's just kind of cool to have everyone here chatting about it, and we all share this experience, and it's kind of a unique experience, so it's just really neat to see you all and hear from you all. So again, this is recorded, this has been recorded, and it'll be up again sometime tomorrow or Saturday on our YouTube page, which you can access, I think, on our website as well. But we're just Union Art Gallery on YouTube as well. So yeah, check that out when it's up, and check out the exhibition in person if you can, and if you cannot, that's totally fine. We have the virtual one up now. I made its little tile on the website, and I input the Matterport link, so everything should be up and good to go to see it. So let me know if you check it out. And yeah, thank you all again for being here, and have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.